Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talent Time. I think I mentioned to you that I'm going to have a great guest this week, and she is here. Her name is Valerie Tutson.
Hello. Great to be here, Sharon.
I'm so glad you came.
Thanks.
Valerie is the foremost storyteller I've ever seen. In fact, the only one I've ever met.
Aha.
Yeah. You are the co-founder of the Rhode Island Black Storytellers. Mm-hmm. And I met you and saw you for the first time in Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Doing a fundraiser for Haitian children.
Yes. Wasn't that a great event?
It was amazing.
It really was, and it was great to hear your music. It was really fun.
Thank you.
Great afternoon.
Thank you. It was very warm, I remember.
It was so hot.
Oh. Tell me something. How did you come up with the story that you told that day? Because I sat there in awe.
Well.
Tell me what the story was again, though.
Well,
tell me a little bit about it so that we can tell our viewers.
I told two, did I just do one Haitian story? I did the story of Sweet Misery. Do you remember that one?
Keep going.
It was a woman, and she was on her way to the market with some honey in a calabash, which is this thing. I brought this with me.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so she was on her way to the market, and she was singing this little song with her honey, and there was a monkey in the tree who heard her song and then started dancing, and then as she went underneath the branch broke and knocked all the honey off of her head, and then, you know, the monkey tasted the honey. She's crying misery. He's like, misery, what's this? Tastes it. It was so sweet. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. I do remember.
Yes.
I remember because as you were saying all of that, I was looking over at the food saying, do you think she'd notice? And I couldn't walk away because every time I go this way, I go, no, couldn't do it because you were tasting the honey. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was very good.
Yeah,
and
really, it was
really
so fun. And you know what was really fun about that was that, of course, there were a lot of Haitian people there.
That was the whole, yeah. How did we do for them, by the way? I know that we were there.
The answer.
And it was a fundraiser, and
I don't know. We need to get the. I don't
it
know.
was It was a wonderful afternoon. In
Apparently,
fact,
they do it every year.
They do. So we'll be there again next year, I'm sure.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Tell me, how did you find out that you could tell stories?
You know, as a kid, my favorite thing to do, well, you know, several favorite things, but one of my most favorite things to do was to gather all my friends together. If I'd read a good book, or if I'd watched, you know, the latest Lost in Space on television. I'm dating myself, but did you not love Lost in Space? You know, and gather us together and retell those stories so that we could act them out and just bring them to life. So I loved that. I thought that I was going to be an English teacher who directed the play because of the drama in the stories. I mean, that's the piece that I love. But when I think when I was about 13, I actually just plain old told a story in church. And that was kind of cool.
They paid attention.
They did.
And that you got the attention. You went, oh no, maybe.
Ooh.
Look
and
at that.
to have nothing. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
That's right.
So you have one simple thing, but that's not even necessary.
Your heart and your brain.
Your heart and your brain, your imagination. Let me take you on this journey with me. And when I experienced that as a senior in high school, listening, and then came to Providence and met storytellers, I thought, oh, I had died and gone to heaven, because it was everything that I loved, all wrapped up into one. It was the drama, it was the teaching, it was traveling the world.
Oh, beautiful,
you know,
beautiful.
There's music in it, there's not, you know, all of it.
Oh, incredible.
All of it.
Your mom, she encouraged you?
She did.
Yes. You're from Connecticut, right?
I am. I grew up in a small town in Connecticut.
New Milford?
You're very good. Very good.
I'm from Connecticut too, so we're neighbors. Connecticut's very small.
It is. It is very small.
So we're neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember hearing that you went to Brown for theater.
I did.
And something else that was something I've never heard. What was it called?
Because I made it up.
Naturally, you're a storyteller. What were you supposed to do? What was it called?
It was called Storytelling as a Communications Art.
Naturally.
Right? It made sense to me. You know, it's really funny, though, because I was there at a time when they talked about stuff like semiotics.
No, no.
and I didn't, and it was at the time when everybody was working really hard to deconstruct story, right? So plays were written, you know, everything was purposely not sequential and didn't necessarily make sense.
Right.
And here I was, you know, doing this pretty traditional approach to story.
Well, of course, you wanted to be in English.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so that's pretty...
Exactly. It is.
Right.
But even that, in the writing in the English department, people were exploring all different kinds of things. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. But the reason I think I wanted the old way of stories was because I was able to learn about cultures that I didn't know anything about. And that was really important to me. That was one of the things that really drew me to storytelling.
Well, I know that you had some amazing teachers.
I sure did.
Because Brown is an amazing university.
Yeah,
and they have incredible.
Yes.
Is there any particular teacher that stands out in your mind?
Well, yes. Oh gosh, actually 4 just jumped in my head.
And now we're not going to insult anybody if you don't name them, right?
I know,
Anybody's
and I'm trying to
feelings.
think.
Okay.
Well, my mentor was a man by the name of George Houston Bass, and he was one of the founders of Rights and Reason Theater. And he had been the personal secretary to Langston Hughes, and his wife, Ramona, is actually, it was at her table that we dreamed up the Rhode Island Black Storytellers.
Also known as
Ribs.
Ribs. Standing for ribs, standing for power, standing for
structure. It's what holds you up. But, you know, we're part
think
of
food.
Food. Yeah, right. So we say, you know, stories, food for the soul.
That's right.
Right?
I love it.
Food for the body and soul. So George was instrumental because he understood the importance of stories in culture. How they help us maintain our culture and pass on values. And you know, I grew up in a really white community. I wasn't exposed to Black history in school. I wasn't exposed to Black culture in school. So for me to finally, you know, come to Brown and meet George and what continues to happen at Rights and Reason, which is, let's go to the cultural stories, let's go to the history, let's find out who we are and tell our stories from our perspective. And so that was really vital to me. So George, Lowry Marshall came into the theater department. She was phenomenal. John Amy of the theater department. I mean, that was just, and Charles Nichols was in the English department.
Great.
And he taught multicultural literature. So really, really fabulous professors.
I think it's interesting how you went there from a non-dominant Black home life.
Yes.
And you had this interest, this yearning, this desire, this hunger for I want to call it the African studies, all of the things that didn't exist at home.
Well, exactly right.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, sometimes I remember, I think I was a junior, could have been a senior, and we had to do an oral presentation. Mm-hmm. I don't know why this popped in my head for me to do, but I did thoughts and feelings on being Black. And it was a kind of a huge deal because I grew up in this town. Everybody knew me. They weren't looking at Valerie Tutson as the Black person. I was just kind of Valerie Tutson. But I went to the library in the big city, you know, down the way, Danbury, where my dad worked. You know, in Danbury High School. We would say, I don't think our father knows where we grew up. You know, but
Will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but
okay.
I'm dying to hear one of your stories.
You are, okay.
Would you mind telling us one?
I don't mind at all.
Excellent.
This is a folk tale.
I love it. Great.
Okay,
I can't wait to hear it.
Sure.
Perfect.
They say that a long time ago there was no night. Can you imagine? It was glorious sunshine all the time. And at this time there was a young woman who lived deep beneath the sea with her father who was the Serpent King. And when she came of age, she said to her father, I want to go and see the world. And even though he didn't want to see his only daughter go, he agreed, and off she went, swimming through the depths of the ocean. And then she swam up and up and up and up and pushed her face through the water and saw sunshine for the first time in her life. And then not only did she see sunshine, but there she saw the beach, and beyond the beach she saw a forest, and she came out of the water and she began to walk. She walked through the woods until she heard the sound of women's voices, and women who were laughing and singing and working together. And so she walked until she came close to the sound, and when she did, the women turned and looked, and they saw her. And they saw that she was beautiful. The women went running around her and they called her Bonita. Oh, you're so beautiful. We're taking you to our chief. Because you see, the chief was young and handsome and unmarried. Well, when the chief saw the beautiful young woman and when she saw the handsome young chief, they fell in love, and as happens in all good stories, they got married. But as time went by, the chief noticed that his most beautiful bride was getting weaker and weaker and sicker, and pretty soon she could barely get out of bed. And so the chief said, "My beautiful wife, what is wrong?" And she said, "Oh, my husband, I'm so exhausted. I haven't had a good night's sleep because it's so bright. I just can't sleep." Well, when the chief heard that, he looked at his bride and he said, "What can I do?" And she said, "Oh, go to my father. Deep, deep, deep in our home in the ocean, it is so dark. It is so beautiful. Please, maybe he'll send some of the darkness." And when the chief heard that, he called 3 of his most trusted servants. And he said, "I want you to go down the path, through the woods. And when you get to the ocean, I want you to call for my beautiful bride's father. And then you do whatever he says to do. And if you don't listen, you will be punished." And so the 3 servants agreed, and they headed away from the village, and they went all the way through the woods until they came to the shore. And when they got there, they looked out at the beautiful ocean, and they called for the king of the sea. "We are calling for the father of the beautiful woman." And the water began to swirl round and around and around and around, and the men were frightened, but they stood their ground, and round and around and around and around, and then up came this mighty serpent with a crown on its head. "Who is it that is calling for me?" the serpent wanted to know. And the men were frightened, but they told their story. "We've come because your daughter has married our chief, and your daughter can't sleep because we have no darkness, and so she has sent us to bring some for her. Can you do it?" The serpent king, hearing that, swirled round and around and around again and went deep down into the belly of the ocean. And when he came back up with a bag woven out of seaweed, and he tossed it onto the beach at the feet of those 3 men. And then he said, "Take that bag back to my daughter. Do not open it until you reach the village." And so the men agreed, and then the serpent king swirled around and around, and he was gone. The men picked up the bag, and as soon as they did, they heard sounds that they had never heard before. Ooh, ooh, ah, 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 ooh, yeah. It was very frightening to them. They looked at one another, and they knew the promise that they had made, and so they picked up the bag and they began to walk with it away from the beach, back through the forest, and all the while they were hearing those strange sounds, and they wondered what in the world was inside the bag. "We can't open it. Oh, I know we're not supposed to. Oh, I can't take it anymore," one of them said, and threw the bag down onto the ground and opened it up. And as soon as he did, night and darkness and all of its creatures filled the forest and every place around. Bonita, she was back in that village, that beautiful bride. Oh, when the darkness came, she fell right to sleep. And just as it was time for darkness to end, those creatures that had been let out of the bag, why, they were all the creatures that loved the night, and they were the birds that also signal that night should end and the sun should rise again. And so one of the birds sang its song, and the sun began to rise, and that beautiful bride stretched. And she woke up refreshed. Oh, she had the color back in her face, and her husband was happy, and the two of them were laughing when the three men came running into the village. Oh, they were terrified, and they were holding the empty bag of the woven seaweed in their hands. The chief said, "What happened?" And the men explained. They told the whole story, how they'd gone there. They talked about his bride's father, and they talked about the bag that they'd been carrying and the sounds that they heard, and they weren't supposed to open it, but they did anyway, and the night came, and the beautiful bride took the bag. I remember this. I remember the seaweed and all the life deep beneath the surface of the water, and she opened it up and she reached inside, and when she did, there was one shell left, and she took it and she tossed it up into the sky, and when she did, the little bits of sand fell from it. "Now the bag is empty," she said. She was so happy, but the chief was not. Because he looked at his three servants and he told them, "I gave you strict orders that you were to do whatever it was that my bride's father said, and you did not listen. Therefore, you are going to be changed forever." And he gave a signal, and each one of those men was turned into a monkey. Oh yes. If you go through the forest there, even now, you will hear the men, the monkeys, in the trees telling the story about what had happened. And at night, when the sun goes down and that night falls, if you look up into the sky, you will see the last gift that Bonita received from her father. That shell is now the moon, and the sand, the stars. And that's a story of how the night came.
Oh my God, that was incredible. Tell me,
Thank you.
it was a true story, right?
How'd you know?
I
always
tell.
tell them all the story. The kids say that all the time.
Oh,
Is it true?
my
I say everything's true except for the parts I made up.
How do you get your inspiration? Where does it come from?
Well, you know, I actually find stories in lots of different places. I love to listen to other storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these stories have been passed on. You know, the story I just shared is from the oral tradition, and I've read several different versions of the story. So that's kind of a combination of what I read and what I imagine, and then, of course, what I remember in the moment that I'm telling it.
I love it. Hey, make it up as you go along.
Sometimes
It
that
works.
happens.
They call that jazz.
Yeah, and there you go. There you
Just
go.
jazz it up.
Yeah. So I love that. I love the folklore. I love the magical things. I love to tell stories from Black history. I love to tell my own stories, usually of my travels in different parts of Africa, kind of mixed in with some of the songs and stories along the way, so that you know, people can go on the journey that I went. Again, that whole idea of let's go on this journey together.
Speaking of,
Yes.
I read that you usually start any story
Yes.
with a song.
I do, and I didn't do that,
No,
did I?
I know. So can you do one with me, please?
Yes.
I know that you do this one that I particularly love.
Okay, good.
And is it called Dakuona?
It is, and I want to say that I learned it from my friend Masanko Banda. who's a storyteller and a dancer, drummer.
Where?
He lives part-time, well, actually, no, he's full-time in Malawi now, which is in Africa.
Right.
He used to live part-time California, part-time Malawi, but he fell in love back home, and so now he's based in home. But
Okay.
he taught me this, and so I love, because I think this is going to change the world.
I'm ready.
All right, so
I'm ready for it. I'm looking
all right,
for
here we
something
go.
to change the word.
Dakuona, 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 moni.
I love it.
It's very simple.
I'm ready.
All right, ready?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Dakuona, 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 moni. Beautiful.
I love it. I love it. I feel.
Yeah. And you probably don't even know what it means.
No, what does it mean?
It means I see you with my eyes. I see you with my heart. I see you in front of me, because dakuona literally means I see you.
Oh.
And moni means I greet you with respect. So this is a greeting song from Malawi.
And wouldn't it be wonderful if the whole world.
That's why I say, when I go places, I say, I'm going to teach you something that will change the world. Yeah.
Well, everybody should do that.
I
Absolutely,
agree.
that song every day.
All right, there you go. Pass
I'm
it on.
gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Pass it on.
I know that half of storytelling is listening,
Yes,
because you also went to school for acting, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. And I did as well. And I remember one of my teachers saying to me, I don't understand what you're saying. How come I don't understand? And I said, because I wasn't listening to anything anybody was saying to me. I was just doing my lines. And I'm wondering, do you find half of storytelling is listening?
Absolutely.
Do you when you speak with people, are you sort of banking the information, sort of what to do, how to react? Because I know that.
Do you mean in performance or just in general?
In general, I mean, life is experiences, listening to people, hearing what they say. If you walk through life with your eyes closed, you end up very much alone, and you really aren't full. Your cup is not full. And talking to you, seeing you, watching you, listening to you, your CDs, which are unbelievable. So if anybody would like, there's a couple of CDs
Yes,
here.
I have two different CDs.
Right. And they're available just to.
They can email me and I can mail them out. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Email you, mail them out. I will give the people the information,
Okay.
but listening and
Yes.
watching you, the communication. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Even talking out in the green room, listening to you. It's an experience that I'm sure you haven't had with anybody else. In other words, everything's brand new.
Right. Everything is brand new, and that can be tricky, right?
Right.
Even if it's a story you've
Scary.
told. Scary.
Storytelling is scary.
Yeah, it is.
Me would be scary. You kidding me? I wouldn't even know where to go with it.
Well, singing with a band would be a little scary for me.
Yeah, and you see, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And I can stand up
That's right. That's
not
right.
even think about it.
But the listening part is the key, because, a friend of mine and I were talking about it, because even with stories, you can get on a roll, and you just kind of go down, you have your routine, you're doing your thing, and until you engage that presence, and that's the listening piece. There's a wonderful storyteller in New York called Laura Sims, and she talks about that. She talks about, do you know her?
No, but I'm looking at. I'm saying that this sounds familiar because I worked in New York for years.
Oh,
But I'm
she
thinking.
has been telling stories for 40 years, and she started when she was like 19.
Well, you know what's so interesting? Before TV,
Yes.
internet,
Yes.
computers, telephones, all there was stories.
All there
Storytelling. I mean,
was.
you'd go to your grandparents' house
you'd-
and your friend's house, and what would you do?
Sit around and tell stories.
That's it.
And now it's shocking when people will be sitting even at table and they whip out their cell phones. It's stunning.
Oh, it's so.
It's so sad. But I think the piece that you're talking about is the listening piece.
Yeah.
That we have to re-engage. It's not just the talking, but it's that slowing down enough.
Actually letting it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make a living at this, don't you?
I do.
You are
I'm
so
blessed.
fortunate.
I am so fortunate.
Oh. I just, I just want to give people the information on how to get your CD.
Please, that would be wonderful.
Let's see. Valerie Tutson is a storyteller, and you can visit her website, which I did, and it's beautiful.
Thank
it's beautiful.
you.
www.valerieTutson.com. And to email Valerie, it is vtutson, Tutson @yahoo.com. And if you really want to call her, you'll take their phone calls.
Absolutely.
401-439-7122. So you're a very easy person to talk to, easy person to get in touch with. I had no problem reaching you.
You were very good.
But I do want to say a couple of things, and that are, you have some workshops and some classes that I know that you give.
Yes.
And you open them up.
Yes.
And can people contact you about those things?
They can, and probably the best, they can get on my mailing list through my website, which is really great, because then I send out anything that's public, anything that's open to the public. The school stuff I don't, kind of mail out. But sometimes people hire me to come and do workshops in other places, but I'm looking forward to actually hosting some trainings myself in the upcoming months.
Wow.
I don't know exactly when they're going to be, but sign up on the website, and then you'll be the first, whoever will be the first to know.
Well, quickly, are there any things coming up that people can see you come to?
We're doing something at Trinity. I don't know, depending on when that'll be the end of August. They are having a big day-long celebration, and I'll be a part of that. I don't know the time yet, so you'll have to check their schedule.
We'll keep track of that.
And then we do once a month at the Rhode Island Black Storytellers in Providence. We host something that we call Gumbo Story Gathering.
Oh.
And this is when we go back to the listening part. This isn't big performance, so I just always want people to know, no, you're not going to get big time performance, but this is just gathering whoever comes. That's our community. And we do potluck stories and food.
Great.
And we do it the fourth Wednesday of every month.
Perfect.
And it's free to the public.
Well, I want to thank you for coming.
I want to thank you, Sharon.
And I want to have you back on again, because there's so many things for me to ask you about.
All right.
Okay.
We'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Talent Time. I am Sharon Zafiro, and you can visit me at talentimesharon@gmail.com. And you can watch the show over and over, because I can't seem to get enough of it. So thank you very much. Have a great day.